The stories from frontline communities, I feel, that are the essential testimonies that we don't often hear, but that can really guide us in the just solutions that we're seeking.
I'm here in the Twin Cities, a place where real-world climate problem solvers of all walks of life are helping the world reach Drawdown. And Drawdown's neighborhood Twin Cities is all about highlighting those voices, especially the voices that often go unheard. How can you as an everyday person be part of the solutions and tap into your story to make the impact and build the future you want to see? Today I'm talking with the founder of Change Narrative, Jothsna Harris, who's a storyteller and community builder who knows climate solution stories and their power in the Twin Cities and beyond.
I'm Jothsna Harris, and I'm the founder of Change Narrative. I'm a mother. I have 2 teenage children, a husband, so a mother and a wife, and I guess a concerned person in this world, and creative person, a person who is emotional, and I think that has been an area that has not been fully embraced, that we are emotional beings, especially because climate is something that is part of our humanity now. It's part of the human experience. I feel excited that I don't have to apologize for that.
What did you want to be growing up?
I think honestly, like most people, I didn't know what I wanted to be growing up. It took a good friend of mine inviting me to a youth program at the Science Museum of Minnesota. It's called the Kitty Anderson Youth Science Center, and it felt more like a place to hang out, but what I didn't realize was I was learning things also and gaining a lot of exposure to different career paths, and we got to participate in archaeological digs and creating signs that said the stormwater drains to the river. Yeah. Just interacting with museum staff and visitors and speaking to the board, I think really reinforced that I do have a power in my own voice, but also being a part of that program was one of my first experiences where I saw other students of color, because I grew up in a predominantly white community, neighborhood and school and church. And so it was an opportunity for me to see other people, races and cultures and immigrants. And as a first-generation American, my parents are from India, that was really impactful for me to kind of find a community. So I think that had a lot to do with shaping my identity, not only in thinking about my future career, but also just finding a community of support and feeling like I belonged somewhere.
What is your climate story?
I call myself a farmer. It's sort of like a title that I didn't always embrace. Somebody else actually needed to tell me, no, you are a farmer, for me to believe that I was. I love to plant by the moonlight, and it's something that I learned through an experience that we had as a family when we traveled to Italy and WWOOFed, which is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. It's this exchange program where you go and sort of work on a farm and then receive room and board in exchange. And we took our whole family. Our children were 3 and 6 years old at the time. And one of our host sites, I learned to plant by the full moon. It's something that feels really special to me because I feel grounded in that practice. And my name, Jothsna, means moonlight, and my middle name, Nalini, means lotus flower, so my name is lotus flower in the moonlight.
Wow.
Leaning into my name and what that means, and kind of these beautiful pieces that can be brought into talking about a subject that is very scary to talk about, is really important for thinking about how can we reimagine and build and engage in solutions in a way that is meaningful to our being and to future generations.
What you said about your name being such a core part of tying into kind of your role as a farmer, I think is really powerful. And I don't think it's a secret that that's the thing that sort of led to some momentum of you finding this place and tapping into your role and tapping into your real world superpowers to make a difference. How do you help other people navigate nervousness when it comes to their stories?
I think about the role that imposter syndrome plays in that. And imposter syndrome is really less about the lack of capability to do something and more about mindset. And I really believe that the way that we've talked about climate change through the sciences has been important, but it also has set this tone that you kind of have to be an expert or credentialed to talk about it. So I think when you realize that you have everything inside of you to be able to talk about climate change through your own experience, it can help take away the nerves because you know your own experience and nobody else can dispute that.
What is change narrative?
We're in a time that storytelling is now a widely recognized strategy in the climate movement. I don't think it's always been like that, and I really appreciate that there's now an opportunity to balance the science and the data with our lived experiences. And so changing the narrative means that in order to shift the ways that we've talked about climate change, we have to include the voices of everyday people, and especially people who have typically been excluded from critical discussions and decision making about it, which of course includes Black people, Indigenous people, people of color, and others who really bear a disproportionate burden of the impacts. And it's really the stories from frontline communities, I feel, that are the essential testimonies that we don't often hear, but that can really guide us in the just solutions that we're seeking. I think that there's so much that we've learned that we choose to ignore. We've seen major climate-related events in our news, from heat waves across many parts of our world, with catastrophic flooding in Pakistan, which has killed 1,000 people and has displaced 33 million people, and really all in a country that has generated less than 0.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And then, like here in the United States, in Jackson, Mississippi, which is 80% Black, we're seeing a water crisis that lack of investment in safe infrastructure has led to the current crisis that there's now no drinkable water in the foreseeable future of Jackson. We're also in the 17th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Wow.
So
yeah.
Hurricane Katrina really opened a lot of people's eyes, not only to the level of disaster that we can experience, but also the failure of the government to act. And the response in Hurricane Katrina, which I feel really grateful to be able to work with frontline communities across the Gulf to Appalachia right now, and hearing some of those stories about Hurricane Katrina and the BP oil spill and Hurricane Ida. But what I'm learning about it is just opening my eyes to these injustices that aren't just from 17 years ago, they've continued. The rising floodwaters came into people's homes and they escaped into their attics, and literally whole families drowned in their attics because they couldn't get out. And the responses that we saw many years later in Hurricane Ida and still playing out today haven't changed that much.
No.
So what have we learned? We've learned a lot and we've chosen to ignore. Those lessons are there, and we need to open our eyes to be able to see that this is not just a few instances of environmental racism, but they're really played over and over and over again.
What has this local climate community looked like from when you've gotten involved to now? Has the community evolved in any way? I'd love for you to paint a picture of what that's been like.
I think the ecosystem of types of people and organizations involved in climate work in the Twin Cities are very vast. People who are engaged at different levels, whether that's like at the grassroots or the grass tops. But one of the things that I've noticed is that there are different ways, different kind of, approaches to doing the work. And I think at first for me, I was doing the work in a way that was outcomes based and really efficient as possible, and kind of this fast pace, being productive. But what I've learned from a lot of people is that actually can be counter to the work itself. And I have felt that personally, just being embraced by the community and really shown what reciprocity looks like, that it's not extractive or transactional, but it means that I care about your well-being even when there's nothing in it for me or very little in it for me. And I think this speaks to a lot of people with an integrity, like they carry an integrity of the work, that this is yes, about solutions to climate change, but the way that we do it, it doesn't necessarily need to mimic the systems that got us into this problem, which have been extractive and kind of rooted in some of those systems that kind of perpetuate that kind of extractive kind of quality. I believe like that deeper relational work is at the heart of storytelling that is building up people instead of using somebody's story for fundraising or for other purposes that don't honor the integrity of what that person has shared. Storytelling to me is not sharing a case study or talking about something in a really rote way that we've practiced. So that actually becomes the work, and I think all of us need kind of that validation, that to be seen.
What motivates you to do the work that you do and to show up in the world the ways that you do?
So I've been working on climate as my career for the last 10 years, and I really didn't see a lot of people who looked like me leading. It was mostly people who were had sort of like this expertise or credential to talk about it, and I think I didn't really see a place for myself in that, and so it really took meeting other people who are doing this work like you, and realizing that whether you've lived through a hurricane or a heat wave or wildfire or drought or water crisis, those experiences really are our expertise and what we can bring to this work. And so we all really have something to contribute to the conversation. And it's not just a few of us who can really be leading it. I think that's really reinforced that I can play a role, and a lot of times when I am leading climate work, there will be people who come up to me afterwards who will say, I didn't realize that there was somebody who looked like me leading in this work, and it means the world to me. That really impacts me to know that not only should I be leading, but other people need to see me, see you in this role, that we're part of the climate conversation too. I'm Jothsna Harris, the founder of Change Narrative, and I'm helping the world reach Drawdown by building capacity in the climate justice movement through the power of our stories.